to Career Uprising. I'm your host and professional career coach, Lorraine Rise. Join me as I guide you through an amazing journey of self-discovery and empowerment. If you are looking for work, changing careers, or stuck in a toxic job, then this is the show for you. I offer both practical and spiritual guidance to help you up-level and advance your career. Let's start the uprising. Hey everyone, you are listening to episode 74, How to Stand Out in a Crowded Job Market with Kyle Elliot. So before we get started, guys, I have a favor as usual. Could you take a moment and hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts to this show? That way you'll know when I put a new show out, you'll never miss one. And if you could leave a review, I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. It helps the show tremendously to be found and helps others to benefit just like you have from listening. So thank you so much in advance for your reviews. I read every one and I truly, truly appreciate them. So how are you guys doing? I got to tell you, the sun is shining in Virginia and I'm so excited because it's been dreary and gloomy for several days straight. So the clouds have broken, the sun is shining. I have an amazing guest today, and I truly mean that. I'm really, really excited. You guys are in for a treat with the topic and the guest that we have today, and I'm just really overwhelmed with gratitude for so many things in my life. I'm just in a great place, and the show is doing well. Business is going well. And I'm just very grateful for my listeners. And in particular, I had a former client and a longtime listener of this show reach out to me on LinkedIn just a couple of days ago and just wrote me this nice note and thanked me for the coaching sessions that we had done 3 full years ago and for my podcast, which he had been listening to. And it just was so amazing, not just for the compliment, of course, we all like that, but I think we all want to know that our work matters. We all want to feel like what we're doing is for something. And when I get that feedback and those success stories from clients, it just really shows me that my work matters and that it's being received, right? So that was wonderful. So thank you to that client and to all of you listeners as well. I think that being a career coach and a life coach is just incredibly important work, and I'm honored to do it. And speaking of career and life coaches, I have another one on the line and in the studio with me today. I have a gentleman who is truly unique and exciting, and he always keeps it interesting, keeps me laughing for sure. Kyle Elliot is in the studio, you guys, and if you don't know who he is, you need to, because I consider myself a follower of Kyle. He's got 60,000 plus followers, something like that on LinkedIn. Truly, truly remarkable. And what I love about this guy is he has a style all his own. He's truly unique, and he's known as Caffeinated Kyle because of his love of coffee. Starbucks, I think, specifically, but he integrates this love of coffee into his personal brand and his story as a coach, which I love. And that's something that you as a job seeker or a career changer can absolutely embody in coming up with your own brand and your own stories. So I'm going to let this gentleman introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his journey, but I'm really, really excited. We're also going to be talking about how you can stand out in a crowded job market, and I think Kyle is just the person to help us with that. So with that, welcome to the show, Kyle.
Yes, Lorraine, thank you so much for having me and for your kind words. I'm so excited to be here. As you said, I'm a career and life coach. A lot of my clients are in Silicon Valley and looking to stand out in the crowded job market, especially in Silicon Valley, where we have companies like Facebook, LinkedIn, Google, these companies that are getting tens of thousands of applications per week. And my job is to help people find jobs at these companies and to stand out from all the other applicants. So I love the work I do to help people find jobs, hopefully jobs they love, but at least jobs they tolerate and navigate the super competitive, saturated job market. So I'm excited to be here today and talk with you and your audience about how to stand out in the crowded job market.
Thank you. Yeah, and you and I have a lot of crossover, but there is some difference, and you are unique in that you really specialize in the Silicon Valley, which I would be curious as we get into the conversation to know how that search maybe might be unique or different than others. But you said thousands of job applicants. That's a lot. That right there says that how competitive it is. That's crazy. But tell our listeners just a little bit about you. Tell me about your career journey and how did you become a coach? Because you became a coach at a very young age. You're even younger than I am. So and I think that's fascinating. Tell us, how did you arrive at this career choice?
Yes, I love sharing my story in regard to how I became a coach because it's quite different than most coaches. It was 100% by accident up until the month I left to be a coach. I then re-signed my contract at work and then rescinded it and said, never mind, I'm not coming back. But it really started on Fiverr, where you can pay someone $5 to complete a gig for you. That's what they call them, as gigs. And my gig was writing resumes. I would give resume reviews. I would write LinkedIn summaries. I would edit people's college essays for $5. And I was excited if I could do 4 an hour, because in college that was $20. And once Fiverr took their cut, I think I made $15 or $16. So it would pay for Starbucks, which you said we were talking about, which I love. It would pay for Subway. And that's how I started it, just as a way to pay for Starbucks and Subway mainly in college. And then I went to grad school, continued my side hustle up in Seattle, raised my prices, I think $25 to review a resume, maybe $50 to write one. And it just kept growing as a side hustle. And then a few years ago, I was like, what would it look like to turn this into a business? So I kept growing and I said, okay, I would love to just have this as a side business throughout my life. And then one day I was like, you know what, I could do this full time. If I dedicated the 50, 60 hours a week that I was dedicating to my full-time job, what would this look like? And this light just went off in my head. So like I said, I had this job. I was working full-time at San Francisco State University. I loved the job, renewed my contract in May. And then in June, I went to my boss and said, oops, I didn't mean to renew it. I'm going to actually leave.
Whoops,
and run this business full time. And it's been amazing over the last almost 3 years now of helping people, primarily in Silicon Valley, but really all over the world, find jobs they love. And a lot of people are looking in Silicon Valley where it's just super competitive. So I love being able to use my unique perspective and not having a traditional career coaching or recruiting background to help them navigate this super saturated market.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, in following you, you're very active on LinkedIn, which I think is great. You're very visible. You really put yourself out there. You post a lot. And one thing I like about you, well, there's a lot of things, but one thing I notice about you is your commitment to being authentic, to being truthful, and being confident really about who you are, or it appears that way at least. But do you find that a lot of your clients struggle with doing what you do in that sense, that self-confidence, putting yourself out there? And because a lot of, I tell people a job search is a very vulnerable thing to be in, right? It really exposes sometimes a lot of insecurities that people have because they need to be visible and put themselves out there. But I'm curious what your experience is in helping clients to get through that.
Yeah, I think dating someone or being in love and a job search are two of the most difficult things we'll ever go through in life because of the amount of rejection, the amount of commitment, the navigating of going through it. It's this blend of art and science. And I think the rejection is the most difficult part for people. And they really have to learn to build up that rejection muscle. And that's what clients tend to come to me in a place of being rejected over and over. They've applied to hundreds, sometimes over 1,000 jobs and not heard back from these places, or maybe got a few interviews and then been rejected, and they've been defeated over and over and over. And they're just overwhelmed and they feel like something's wrong with them. And there isn't anything wrong with them. I describe it, I love using the analogy of a candle. A lot of the people who come to me are like a nice $40 Nordstrom or Anthropologie candle. They're the best of the best. But right now we're about to hit St. Patrick's Day and my clients are still wrapped like it's Hanukkah or Christmas, and they just have the wrong wrapping paper on them. And then the employer gets in it. It's like, okay, you're giving me a Christmas gift, end of February, beginning of March. This is strange. I want a St. Patrick's Day gift. So my clients, what's fabulous about them is they are that great $40 candle. We just have to change the wrapping paper, and that's easy. we don't have to change the whole candle. So I think that's the problem is people feel like there's something wrong with them at the base. They feel like they're the wrong candle and they're amazing, great, expensive candles. We just have to change how we present them, which is a lot easier. But sometimes people don't
Yeah.
realize that. They think, oh, there's something wrong with me as a human or as a person, because so much of our
Yeah.
worth and value is tied to our careers. It's our livelihood. It's how we pay our mortgage. It's how we pay for our kids to go to college.
Absolutely. I like that. I like that emphasis on it's not who you are, it's just what we're focusing on and how we're presenting you. But it doesn't require you to change anything about your skills or your personality necessarily. It's what you have to offer is good enough. We just need to put it out there in a better way. Absolutely. I like that. I think that that's a good perspective, definitely. And so there's no doubt too that it is a crowded job market out there, and I can only imagine Silicon Valley. Everyone wants to work at a Google or a Facebook and things like that.
Mhm.
What are some of the strategies that you have found to be effective? How do you help clients with this?
One of the biggest things I do when I help clients is a lot of people hire me to write their resume, but what I find sets me apart, I know you do this too, is really helping people with the job search, not just saying, here's your resume, okay, good luck,
Mm-hmm.
goodbye, but really helping
Mm-hmm.
them with the plan. And something I'm big on is I encourage my clients for every job they apply to reach out to at least 5 people who are in their dream role at that company. So if they want to be a product manager at Facebook, reach out to other product managers at Facebook and say, hey, I see you're a product manager at Facebook. I do product management at Google, for example. I'd love to chat for 20 minutes to share best practices. And you're not saying, here's my
Mm.
resume Kyle just crafted, or hey, I want to work there, but really just building connections at these companies. And then if you have a great conversation, say, hey, I see Facebook is hiring for this product manager for this messaging app or for your new cloud initiative, whatever it may be, and then create that conversation. But I love reaching out to those people instead of just recruiters or hiring managers. Because one, if that person is a product manager there, they already went through the hiring process so they can give you tips. And then two, their boss is the hiring manager. So if that person and you hit it off, they can provide you an introduction to the hiring manager and perhaps an internal referral, because a lot of these companies, especially in Silicon Valley, offer incentive programs for referrals internally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, a lot of people I think get kind of disillusioned working with recruiters, and then the recruiters get a bad rap, and I think there's a lot of complexity to that, but it sounds like you're saying that that's one method, but don't limit yourself just to that. Go
Mm-hmm.
for people who are perhaps doing the job
Mm-hmm.
there that you want to be doing already. Is that right?
Exactly, exactly. And recruiters are amazing. I chat with them all day, but they get so many messages. I write a lot of
Mm-hmm.
profiles for recruiters. And when I go in to upload their profile, I'll be in there for 10 minutes updating it and adding the stuff that I wrote. And then they'll have 20 messages in that 10-minute period from job seekers saying, here's my resume. Here's my resume. Are you hiring? So they just get
Yeah.
overwhelmed. But reaching out to a product manager at Facebook or Google, they're only getting a few dozen messages a month, if that. So you have a lot better chance to get them on the phone, build a relationship, and really leverage networking. Because it's depending on the source, 80 to 90% of jobs are achieved by networking. So that's why I love spending so much time on networking and not just going to networking events or not just messaging a million people, but really being intentional and strategic with your efforts.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. Yes. And I have told people that a lot that, you can reach out to recruiters, but understand the response rate is low. It's not your fault. There's just a sea of applicants, and LinkedIn especially, I think, because, a lot of people don't have their email address. So they get inundated with LinkedIn messages, and it's really hard to stand out that way. So sometimes you have to go in through a side door or something,
Yes.
I tell people the response rate is low, but don't take it personally. But I'm curious. So I want to talk about the recruiting process in general, because we're kind of touching on that a little bit. And technology has changed it so much in the last couple of years. And, whether it's for better or for worse, I don't know. There's a lot of debate about that and the applicant tracking system. I'm curious just what your take is on that. How do you feel like technology, has it helped or hindered the recruiting process? Is it a good thing overall, these applicant tracking systems? I'm just curious kind of what your experience is. And I know you emphasize networking probably a lot, but I'd just be curious what your thoughts are on that.
I love this question. I just read a book. I'm doing my doctorate in adult education, and the book is called Is Technology Good for Education? And the answer on like the first page is it's both. It's yes, good and bad. So I think it's the
Mm-hmm.
same for the recruiting process and for the job search. It's good and bad. One thing that I think is good is it's increasing access in regard to finding jobs. We are having access to jobs all over, especially a lot of my clients are relocating from different parts of the country, or a lot of people are coming to me who are from Europe or Southeast Asia, and they're saying, hey, I want to work in the US. This allows me to do my job search from abroad compared to having to walk into companies and apply. So I think that point really makes it easier for people to find jobs. But I think on the flip side, there's so much noise now, and companies are getting thousands and thousands of applications for a single role. I believe it was last year or the year before, LinkedIn got like 2 million applications for roles. And there's just so much noise, it's difficult to stand out. And then the other part I worry about is accessibility. While there's a lot of access, I wonder if it's accessible to everyone. I think if someone like my daddy is not super technologically savvy, that'd be difficult for him to navigate the job search in our current era at one of these big tech companies where you're required to go on, create a LinkedIn profile, all of this technology. We're leaving certain people behind, not just in regard to age, but just people who aren't technologically savvy. I wonder who we're leaving behind in this process.
Interesting. Yeah, because well, and that's funny that you bring up the age thing too, because have been talking a lot. I just did a show the other week on how there's 5 generations working together in the workforce right now, one of which is the silent generation, which is in their 70s. There's definitely are still in the workforce and applying for jobs for, whether by
Yep.
necessity or choice. But so that's interesting that you mentioned that because that's another kind of implication of that we don't
Yes.
necessarily
Oh,
think
absolutely.
of. Yeah, yeah. So going back again to standing out in a crowded market, because this is such a pain point I know for clients. So what are maybe some one or two top tips for that you could share? I don't know if it would be with the resume or with the LinkedIn. I know I emphasize with people really being personable and it kind of
Mhm.
conversational on your LinkedIn, but or storytelling a little bit. But what do you find in terms of maybe the resume and the LinkedIn is really effective in helping people to kind of grab attention or stand out?
So one of my favorite rules to follow, which is kind of ironic given the role, but is to break the rules but don't be an a-hole. So that comes from my dad. I love that. I have a keynote where I actually give titled that, but is to break some of the rules of the job search. So there are certain rules people have in regard to how you should write a resume, and I like strategically and intentionally breaking those rules. For example, one of my favorite things to do to add to a resume is to add a really intentional testimonial. So if you say you're super organized, I want to hear from someone who was at an event you organized, maybe an event attendee, saying, oh my gosh, I've been to dozens of conferences. This conference had 1,000 people and it was the best organized conference I've ever been to in my life. And it was amazing. I loved the food. I loved the speakers. I want someone else to speak to it because you can say you're amazing, but I want someone
Hmm.
else to speak to how amazing you are. I eat out a lot, probably 2 or 3 nights a week at least, because I don't cook. So if my partner's not cooking, we're eating out. So if
Right.
I go on
That's fun.
Yelp and someone has no reviews on Yelp, I'm like, oh, this is sketchy. I'm not going to eat here. And I think the same goes for your LinkedIn or resume. You don't have to have a review or testimonial, and people aren't going to think you're sketchy, but it takes it to another level. You can say you're organized or dependable or led this big acquisition. But if someone else is saying it, or two or three people are saying it, it just takes it to the next level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think LinkedIn recommendations in a way are kind of like the modern letter of recommendation. That I tell people
They
that
really
that's
are.
a really great way to do that rather than providing, I guess, the traditional letter of recommendation, although maybe that may still be necessary. But this is a way to give it to them without even asking, right? It's right there up front. I think it makes it more compelling, and it's definitely a missed opportunity. I agree. If people don't have those testimonials and have those recommendations, but you're saying maybe even put a snippet of it on the resume too. Is that right?
Exactly. Yes, I love
Yeah.
including it on the resume. Sometimes at the top of the resume, I had one client who's from the CEO is like, I've been working for over 22 years and blank person was the best hire I've ever made in 22 years. So right there, you're telling me this CEO, 20 plus years, you're the best person they've ever hired. Wow, that's amazing. And some clients have
Mm-hmm.
told me they've skipped the reference stage because they had testimonials on their resume. So they're like, okay, we already know all these people like you. We're going to skip the reference stage. So that's why I like it on the resume, is because it just adds some dynamicness to the resume. And like you said, and how you like adding stories and personality on the LinkedIn, it really just adds a different feel to the resume and makes you feel human. Because at the end of the day, we don't hire people just who just do things. We hire humans. We hire people based on connection and feelings, not just someone who can do the job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. So, if you were to boil it down to maybe like the top one or two mistakes that you see job seekers make, or if they're changing careers, what would that be for our listeners? Can you think of maybe top one or two things that people are could fix to really impact their job search?
Oh, yes. I think the biggest thing I see is people blending in. They come to me and they say, Kyle, how does my resume look? How does my LinkedIn look? How's my elevator pitch? And oftentimes it's good. They have a good pitch. They have a good resume or LinkedIn, but it's not amazing. And what happens in this saturated job market, or for these really competitive fields, project management, product management, program management, marketing, sales, business development, good is not good enough. You have to be really amazing. And they are, like I said earlier, they're that nice Nordstrom or Anthropologie candle, but they're not presenting themselves nicely. They went for really cheap Dollar Tree wrapping paper. So I think it's key. Maybe just have Nordstrom wrap the candle for you, or buy a little bit nicer wrapping paper, or just let the candle speak for itself. But I think the key is they're just not presenting themselves as nicely as they are, and they're not doing themselves justice with the wrapping, and just they're blending in. So I think that's the key. So I really want people to show up and show how amazing they are in their resume, in their LinkedIn, in their networking, in their interviewing, and not blend in. So I think that's the key. People just play it too safe. And I don't think you need to take a bunch of risks or have a pink or purple resume. But sometimes I like purple, actually, if it's strategic and like eggplant color. But I think the key really is to not blend in and to take a few calculated risks and say, here's how I'm different from the other 10,000 applicants. And that's one of the first questions I ask when I write resumes is, okay, there's 10,000 applicants. What's the one thing you can offer Facebook that the other 10,000 people can't offer? And it usually stumps people, and then we work through it together. But I want you to be able to answer that on your LinkedIn, in your resume, and in your interview, and then you're going to have the job.
Absolutely. And a lot of people really have a hard time doing that for themselves, which I think is why they come to a coach, right? They
Mm-hmm.
know they have the skills, but they don't know how to upgrade themselves, as you say, from the Dollar Tree wrapping up to, the Nordstrom or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's hard for people to do for themselves. Would you agree to be, objective and talk about themselves? I know I come across a lot of people who really struggle with talking about themselves in that way.
Yes, it's so difficult, and it's okay to ask for help. I don't know how to cut my own hair; it'd look horrible, so I go to someone. So it's
Yeah.
okay to ask for help, and I think within our industry, more and more people are asking for help. I'm seeing less of a stigma asking someone to write your resume or to get
Hmm.
advice with interview coaching, or say, "Hey, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I need some career discovery support." But recognize that we
Absolutely.
ask for help in all these other areas. For my oil, I could change my oil if I really wanted to, but it's a lot easier and it's going to turn out better if I hire a mechanic. So just recognizing it's okay to ask for help, and it's going to turn out better if you ask someone else, and it's going to be a lot quicker.
Yeah, in fact, I think that's the smart person who recognizes maybe they are not the best person to do that. So maybe it would be good to have somebody partner with somebody who's better at that. I think that's the smart thing to do, quite honestly. And I know I've hired plenty of coaches and services and things like that myself because I don't know what I'm doing with certain stuff. So yeah, I agree. I agree. So I have one question for you. I love your brand, Caffeinated Kyle, and I know it's your love of
Mm-hmm.
coffee, but tell me more about how that came about and maybe how job seekers could do something similar and kind of create a unique little brand or story for themselves. I'd love to know how the persona of Caffeinated Kyle came about.
Yes, so I've always loved coffee. Even in sixth grade on the way to school, I would stop at our Safeway and get a Starbucks there and then drink it on the way to school. So I've always loved coffee. So when I launched my company, I knew it had to have something coffee in the name, but I didn't know how. So I brainstormed with my previous staff. I had a group of resident assistants, and one of them helped me keep brainstorming. And then at like 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, okay, Caffeinated Kyle is the name. And now I encourage my clients to find something that's sticky, that perhaps isn't related to work, that people can still relate to them with. My partner, for example, him and I have Disneyland annual passes. So on his resume at the top of it, it says that he's a Disneyland annual pass holder. It says his years of experience, his degree, he's certified in mental health first aid. And then it has Disneyland annual pass holder. And every single time he landed an interview when he was job searching, people brought it up because everyone loves Disneyland, and it shows that he's fun and appreciates work-life balance and all of these things. So I encourage job seekers to recognize, okay, you're a human, like we shared earlier, and it's really key throughout your job search to really be personable and go beyond just, okay, here's what I can do for you and how I can show up at work and get the job done. Because at the end of the day, like I said, we hire based on personality and being a human and based on feelings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, so Kyle, I have just loved this conversation, but why don't you share, where can listeners go to learn more about you or connect with you?
Yes. My website is caffeinatedkyle.com. And then I spend tons of time on LinkedIn, Kyle Elliot. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Caffeinated Kyle.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show. I think this has been a great conversation, and I know it will be of value to listeners. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
You're welcome. All right, my listeners, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Kyle, and definitely connect with him. Follow him on LinkedIn. He keeps it interesting for sure. And if you want to be a success story as well, you can certainly take the first step and also join my email community or connect with me on LinkedIn as well. You can find me at careeruprising.com. But I hope you guys will subscribe, leave a review, share this episode, and have a beautiful day. I'll talk to you guys next time. That's it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you heard today, please consider giving the show a positive review on iTunes. It would mean a lot to me, and it would help to spread the word so that others can learn about the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and I can't wait to connect with you again next time on Career Uprising.
This show was brought to you by InflowRadio.com, the best curated talk radio network for personal development, wellness, spirituality, and conscious business.